Welcome back, everyone. Yeah, if you're joining us and you notice it says Part 2, History of Ireland, and you haven't listened to Part 1, might want to go back and do that. But not a lot to beat around the bush on for this one because, we're getting right back into it.
And honestly, absolutely go back and listen to Part 1. Part 2 is going to be, I think, a lot more familiar in a lot of the things that go on in Irish history, because this is kind of when everything, all of the frustration and anger that had happened before just begins to boil over.
Yeah, there's actual activity and change taking place. It's not just wars that end up in a stalemate and just it keeps the status quo. So to catch you up in case you decided to skip part 1, or since it's been a week since you're probably listening to this, basically you have the island of Ireland made up of Northern Ireland, which is heavily Protestant. You have then the majority of the rest of Ireland is Catholic. Catholicism is the major religion. They've been fighting over this shit for literally hundreds of years. But currently in control are the English Protestants. The English are in control of Ireland. And it brings us to 1845. What probably, if you're going to talk about Ireland and you're like, tell me the 5 things you know about Ireland, the Irish Potato Famine is probably going to be one of those.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going to be picking up today. Ireland is at a low point. And you got anything before we get started?
See if we can find some luck of the Irish today.
All right. Oh, remember, guys, rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars whenever you guys are listening to us. Keep sending in the feedback. We love it. Without further ado, let's get back into Ireland.
How'd you miss it? Without further ado, here's part 2.
Oh my God. Yeah. Without further ado, here's part 2. But theme music is already played. So here we go. The Blight. So what this basically is as simple as it is. The potato famine. This is a fungus or some type of spore that gets onto the potato stalk, and it basically rots these things in the ground. So 45 rolls around, you go to do the potato harvest, and not stereotypically, but the majority of the Irish populace survives off of potatoes. That's what they're growing.
Whose fault was the Irish potato famine?
As far as the subsistence of the country, mostly off of potatoes, and that being kind of the linchpin.
We'll get to that second. Where did the Irish potato blight come from?
Holland, wasn't it?
The United States of America.
Oh, shit, seriously?
Yep.
In Europe, I hear it started in Holland.
Well, the original, gonna fire this one off early. I can't wait to fuck stuff up early. Phytophthora infestans was what caused the potato blight that actually came from potato plants in the Americas that were shipped over into England. And that is where basically the Yersinia pestis of the potato blight came from.
Of course, it makes total sense now.
Yeah.
We had to come in at some play.
Yep.
Yeah, at some point.
So now point 2. Why are we at where we're at? Why was the potato famine so bad?
I'm going to let you take this one. I could list off a number, and then they're all going to probably blame it on the English.
Well, you were right there. It was when you have a group of people that are living on a small tract of land that are trying to farm it to not only make a little bit of money, but you also have to have something to eat. Potatoes are a very, very easy crop to grow in a small area because it goes underground. They're just roots, basically.
Yeah, tubers.
Yeah.
It's not a tuba.
You can grow a ton of them in a small area. And they're also insanely cheap. Basically, all of the other cash crops that are going out, all of your grains, any sort of agriculture as far as farm animals or anything like that you're slaughtering, all that shit's getting exported because you can make a ton of money off of that. If you're going to keep something if you're going to keep something in country and you're going to keep it local, it's a very calorie dense. I wouldn't call potatoes nutrient rich, but if that's all you have,
Yeah, that you can subsist
Yeah.
on potatoes. You can fucking make vodka and potatoes is what you can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you're saying, also the fact that it was probably such a consistent and like a hardy crop. We're like going deep into potatoes on this. But yeah, I think it was always something that was like reliable that they could always count on to actually have to, survive. And when the blight comes in and it basically rots these things in the ground, they're pulling these things up out of the ground and they're just mush. All of a sudden, fucking Ireland's in a bad way really, really quick. Because it is still essentially under the English and everything. The English have to try to do something. So they're trying to supplement and bring in grain and everything like that to try to alleviate some of this. But it's not in the scale that it needs to happen. You have an entire populace who's being affected by this. And when you only really kind of give a shit about a certain segment of the populace, you're not going to be going to your best efforts to try to take care of everybody. The Whig Party, I think, in England, who was in control at that point, kind of preferred to dial back support. And it's just like, this sounds like an Irish problem. And you're like, well, if we were Ireland independently, then yeah, we would be saying that. But you guys want to have your hand up our ass, working us like a puppet. So you're also responsible for this as well.
Remember that Act of Union thing that you guys sprung on us 45 years ago? That makes you in charge of this, too.
Food inflation goes through the fucking roof. Of course, the people that are literally working to live on these like potatoes and then use those to trade for other things. Without that, they don't have money. They can't afford just on what meager wages they're getting to actually buy any of this, food where the prices have gone through the roof. With this, starvation of the famine also comes disease. Those two are fucking bedfellows. So you get typhoid, you get cholera that's just decimating the population. And we had that first migration, during the first famine and everything. This is the big one that drives a ton of people out of Ireland and into other countries, but mostly over to the United States. And in 1847, during a 2-month period, 5,000 people died on the Atlantic crossing. These boats don't hold a ton of people. And
they called them coffin boats because of this, didn't they?
Yeah, because there was like such a risk. And these are people that are already, it's not like this happened and then the people are like, hey, let's get out right now. These are already people that have been fighting this shit for 2 years. They're starving and they're so desperate that they're like, everybody aboard the coffin ship. And they're like, did he say coffin ship? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, okay.
It's not shaped like a coffin. Why would you call it that?
Yeah, maybe it's just like it's an ironic name or something like that because they're never used as coffins. But regardless, we're getting on this boat.
Well, and the sad fact of this whole Irish potato famine, we'll talk about that.
Farm and famine.
The numbers. But administratively, this was looked at as a cyclical issue. And that's because in 45, when the first crop goes bad, that's not just something that happens in that time period for 3 months. That's your food for the entire year. But at the same time, when it comes back to planting another round, if you can get those potatoes in the ground and you can harvest them, then you're good that year. If you harvest them and they're all shit again, it starts the whole procedure over again. So
and where are you getting the seeds?
Yeah.
Or are you getting everything to grow that next crop if everything from the previous crop you had is useless?
And this wasn't just something that only affected Ireland. The English had a problem with this. The Scottish had a problem with this. There were potato famines everywhere. They just weren't to the level that happened on Ireland because they didn't have the population that was just needed to live with these potatoes, that had to eat these to survive.
That were so reliant on that like one singular crop.
Yeah, and we can talk about who's to blame. I mean, I think England takes a whole hell of a lot of the load, as they should, but maybe, I don't know. So England had sent a group of whatever consisted of a scientist in 1847 to study this thing, an ag scientist, probably.
Yeah. A wizard, yeah.
And they never really figured it out. But as we said, the next year they're like, okay, plant, we'll see what happens. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad.
Plant what?
They're instituting these things called workhouses because there's not enough people out there. They can't make their money selling the potatoes that they're growing. These workhouses, again, just like you were talking about, they're so packed with disease from these people working in these places. Just like getting on the boat. You're not going to a workhouse in tip-top shape. You're going to a workhouse probably pretty sick and emaciated, and then they're just going to get whatever pound of flesh for whatever subsistence they're giving you now.
Yeah.
Then eventually, as you were talking about with the Whigs, they're like, well, shit, shouldn't you guys pick yourself up by the bootstraps and make this happen? What's up with this social welfare program? But that's not really how this works. They end up closing the workhouses. We get to see a rare shout out to the, oh my God, I forgot their names immediately. I know it's, the Quakers.
Oh, yeah, they stepped up a little bit.
The Quakers opened up these food storage places and these soup kitchens just out of their own love for these people to try to get these people fed.
The English subsidized ones that took place only lasted for 6 months.
Because again, we gave you something, but you got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps.
What do you mean you guys didn't figure this out in 6? You didn't figure out this biological plant issue in 6 months and then reverse time and fix the crops before they were supposed to be harvested? Like, I don't know what the thought process is here.
This next one, this shit hit me so deep. And I don't know why it did until I kind of looked at it as a whole. The Choctaw Nation in the Americas that had just been resettled and sent to reservations ended up sending the Irish a $150 donation that would be like $5,000-$6,000 in today's money as a recognition of the plight that's going on in Ireland. The Choctaw Nation that just got kicked off of their land and moved somewhere else felt like somebody else had it worse than them.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. And I guess it's formed a bond between Ireland and the Choctaw Nation that it still survives today. Like it was that metaphorical and meaningful that they did that.
Enough people immigrated during this time that there were more Irish people in New York City than in Dublin.
It was the most Irish populated city in the world?
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, this is where we get, remember Gangs of New York? This is where we get the 5 Points district that they were settling in between, like the Germans and the Nationals and the Irish and the Scot and all that kind of stuff.
And then we get the Irish mob.
Exactly. They went to, one of the representatives for Ireland went to, London to actually speak to the Secretary of the Treasury, this guy named Charles Trevelyan. And Trevelyan is up there as far as like in this episode with Cromwell for me, because this dude says, you know what, maybe this is God teaching the Irish a lesson.
The fuck, man?
Yeah, they live a little bit too immoral for our taste, and I think that this is, we can't go over and do too much because then they won't actually get the lesson itself that God is trying to give them. So we need to make sure we're not doing too much here.
It's the 19th century. We're not talking about a time when the plague first hits and they're like, oh, that's because God's mad at you.
Yeah.
Like, we've come far enough along in society that we can't be like, yeah, no, God's punishing you because you're not Protestant. Because you're not the religion that was formed because Henry VIII wanted to divorce his wife.
It all comes back to that.
Yeah.
It's like the Kardashians and OJ.
Uh-huh.
So the end result of this period of 5 years that the Blight actually affects Ireland and everything, 1845 to 1850, results in 1 million dead from starvation and disease. Now, as a result of this, on the plus side of the Blight, it also takes about 1.5 million people out of Ireland and sends them over to the United States.
United States and England. There was a lot of exodus to England as well.
A lot of Protestant exodus to England of those guys leaving, which ends up resulting in a lot of these Catholic families regaining some of this land.
It sounds like God didn't hate him too much.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, whenever he closes the door, he opens there's still a famine, but there's a window open, with the famine, everything like that.
Population reduced on the island of Ireland from 8 million to 6 million. A quarter of your population lost. And again, this is after the Great Frost that we talked about in the last episode that killed anywhere between 250 to 400,000. Cromwell's bullshit killing off 700,000 people.
Yeah.
It's just, to be able to say that they lost that many people in that short of a time period, to build all the way up to 8 million people.
Yeah.
You started out at 1.5 before Cromwell did his shit.
But that also goes to show you, so when Cromwell was fighting, and everything. And also, even during the first frost or the first famine, the people that suffered the most were the lower peasant class, which were mostly the Irish and the Gaelic people. What that population recovery goes to show you is it's not just like they moved in 4 million Anglo-English or whatever it was. This was people living there, the Protestants, the previous Anglos, the Catholics and everything, all merging together again to rebuild this population. And so you're now getting these generations of actual people that are more identifiably Irish than they are English. And now they're starting to take possession of some of the land. They're starting to get a little ballsier. And did you have anything before the Fenians?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Where are we at on the boards? Oh, Charles Parnell.
Charles Parnell.
Charles Parnell, yes. He was a Protestant organizer that was pushing land reform in 1879. This guy is a real peach of a human being. From 1875 to 1891, he was an MP, so he was in Parliament. He led the Home Rule League from 1880 to 1882 before he led the Irish Parliamentary Party from 1882 to 1891. And for a while, these guys controlled the balance of power in the House of Commons because the Liberal Party on one side and the Tory Party on the other side, the Conservatives, both needed a little bit of help to get things passed from this Irish Parliamentary Party. Go ahead. Land reform that was pushed under Parnell was known as the 3 Fs: fair rent, fixing tenure, and free sale. Fair rent was basically just there was an independent arbiter that could put a rental price on the land so that way the Lord couldn't just jack up the price as he saw fit if he didn't want you to have it.
I thought you meant like the good Lord for a second.
No. The Lord
like
of the
God's
land.
jacking up prices. Damn.
Fixity and tenure. So this means that if you sign a lease for 10 years, you can't get kicked off in 8. You have the protection that as long as you're paying that rent every month that you can't get kicked off of this land. This can't just be a mood that the Protestant dude is in to send your ass off the land. You have to have that protection. And then the free sale of land. So if you have a 10-year lease and you want to sell it to the person right next to you, you don't have to get the Lord's permission. You can, the head of the Lord thing's getting me now.
Like
too.
subletting. You're subletting the land.
You're allowed to sell your share off to somebody else without the approval of the land.
Because those are your shares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a huge kind of way to give power back to these people that are just trying to crawl out of the potato famine.
Which is crazy because this is just fair shit.
Yeah.
And they're having to crawl out just to get to fair.
Yeah. You have to call them rights, but at the same time, it should just be common sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
His party, the Irish Parliamentary Party, was critical in the evolution of these reforms. They also started this push very, very hard for home rule. He began to focus more on the home rule, more primarily with his MP goals and what he was going to do. He used his party seats, as we were talking about, Gladstone's Liberals and the party of the Conservative, Lord Salisbury, were just basically passing the Parliament back and forth. Mm-hmm. This was just how it was going, just based upon what was going on in England. As soon as they would lose power, they would have to dissolve Parliament. They would create a new Parliament. The other one would be in charge.
So MP is Minister of Parliament. PM is Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So you sit in Parliament if you're an MP. Prime Minister is the leader. And he kind of starts to see that if he can lean towards the liberal side and he can kind of make this a core tenet, he's basically giving them, I think it was like 103 seats at the time, towards any of their goals. Enough so that Gladstone was like, okay, we're going to make this a core tenet of our party to try to get home rule passed for you guys. This is where Parnell kind of starts to fall apart. He pushed some things pretty far. Parnell was a bit of a philanderer. Parnell was sleeping with another man in the party's wife. Yeah, another man in the party's wife. The thing was this guy knew about it, and he knew about it for years. But he wasn't going to do anything about it because his wife came from a very, very rich family. Mm-hmm.
So he would be the one that would be cast out and ostracized.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if she dies, or once her parents die and the inheritance shows up in the family, he's then entitled to everything else. So if he can just keep the cheating on the down low,
yes,
he's okay. It actually ends up getting found out that Parnell is cheating with this woman. It had been like an 8 or 9 year relationship, I want to say. And this guy knew about it for the majority of the time. So I'm sure when he found out about it, he's like, fuck.
And in a deeply religious culture, yeah.
Yeah. And if you're a Protestant, what are you allowed to do?
Yeah.
You're allowed to divorce. So he's not going to try to get rid of this woman. And it basically fractures this party that Parnell had tried so hard to create. Some of them stuck with him. A majority of the leaders, William O'Brien is one of them, basically looked Parnell in the eye and he goes, you've been lying this whole entire time. How can I trust you with something as important as home rule, as getting the power back to our country? O'Brien would end up actually being the kind of general force to push these things. He pushes the land reform across the finish line with the Land Purchase Act of 1903. And this is basically what the 3Fs were trying to achieve. He finally made it happen, but it couldn't happen without Parnell. Parnell was a very big part of what happened. He just had a wandering penis.
So along with Parnell, there was another guy who was kind of he was kind of the anti-Parnell, but still wanted the same goals. What Parnell wasn't, he was, and vice versa. This guy, his name was Michael Davitt. And this took place, Michael Davitt comes from a group called the Fenians. And the Fenians were kind of this, I guess you could say, they were very pro-nationalist Irish and everything. And they actually even kind of took part in some terrorism that occurred over in Britain. The first Irish terrorism that took place in Britain was by the Fenians in 1867. So Michael Davitt had been jailed the last 5 years before we come to him at this point. He was a known Fenian, and he had been through the Blight and everything. There was another minor famine that took place in 1878 that only lasted for a couple years, so it doesn't get kind of the attention that the previous one did.
Well, the big thing about it was just because the famine had stopped didn't mean they had exactly figured out how to stop it from happening again. Exactly. So it would continue to pop up just like the plague did.
Yeah. So he ends up getting jailed for 5 years due to this Fenian plot that he's actually part of. I don't know if it was a terrorist plot or what it was, but he has this just fucking insane dislike for the English because he was evicted as a child off of these lands during like the famine and stuff like that. He was a staunch socialist, and he had actually lost an arm at the age of 11 working in a mill.
Damn.
He lost his arm at 11 years old in a mill accident when he was working at 11 years old in a mill. It's fucking insane. So there was kind of something for everybody as far as this push for home rule, because if you didn't associate with Parnell, you could associate with Davitt and then vice versa on that.
Yeah, the whole thing was starting to head in the right direction. And I think that that's sort of why this episode is, I would say it's more guerrilla violence than the mass violence that happened before. But it's because they keep getting closer and closer, and then some of these promises keep getting pushed back. Gladstone's whole plan with this home rule had a major hurdle, because once you got it out of the House of Commons, it had to go to the House of Lords. Mm-hmm. And so even if you passed it in the House of Commons, the House of Lords, which again was primarily very well-to-do people that probably didn't give a whole lot of a shit about Ireland, besides getting their money and resources from them, would just immediately shut down the bill as soon as it got there.
What had happened kind of leading up that actually gave Gladstone even this opportunity? And he's the prime minister at that point as well. There was this union formed after the whole thing with Parnell went down. He lost support. Davitt was still in there, but there was this creation of this thing called the League. And the League was basically a combination of a trade union and a nationalist movement.
Taco, Rafi.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of had support from both sides, because you did have, Davitt, who was a Catholic. You had Parnell, who was actually a Protestant aristocrat. So you had them from actually both backgrounds as well. So they kind of spoke to everybody. And it was funny because Parnell was anti-British because his mom was American.
Makes sense.
But this League actually kind of pushes for essentially, again, kind of like a trade union for unionization of people, and also for the pro-Irish movement. This saw a period of mass industrialization in Ireland as well, when they were trying to kind of play catch up. Farmers and factory workers were provided the opportunity to vote. And this is when there's that big push, like you were talking about for the Irish. They want to be able to buy their own land as well, not just be able to kind of sell it or anything like that. The Protestant ascendancy during kind of this period going up to Gladstone had given way to this form of Catholic, like they called it the petty bourgeoisie. So it was basically just people that were able to own land, but like you would consider the middle class.
Yeah.
Even at this point is what you would consider the petty bourgeoisie back then.
Wouldn't use the term bourgeoisie for the middle class ever.
No, but that's why they call it petty.
Yeah.
It's the petty bourgeoisie. They still had to make it sound good. And then also the church is still putting their weight behind the Irish Catholics for this as well. So there's a lot of pressure and support here. The whole thing with home rule is it wasn't a request for Irish independence, full independence. It was like, listen, this is the same thing we asked for previously. We will go ahead and stay in the empire, but we're going to have an Irish national parliament that is separate from yours that will control what goes on in Ireland.
You know, like we had before.
Yeah, exactly. And Gladstone is like, let's fucking play ball. I'm willing to hear you guys out. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and champion this proposal to get this thing done. Unfortunately, despite all of this support from Ireland, there wasn't a lot of support from the majority of the Protestant portion of Ireland, but then, which you can pretty much consider the English Irish is what they pretty much are.
The Ulsters.
Exactly. And then there was definitely not a lot of support in England itself. There were a few outliers that were like, yeah, why not? We're sick of fucking fighting and everything. Just give them what they want. And they won't fucking terror tax anymore. But the Home Rule Bill ends up being defeated, and this leads almost immediately to riots in Belfast.
Which, interestingly enough, Ulster region, this is the Catholics rebelling in the primarily Protestant area. Mm-hmm. So this is hitting them basically where it hurts, but at the same time, you're not furthering your cause by attacking the people that already thought you weren't fit to govern.
Yeah, if there's riots happening, in the south of Ireland or anything like that, England's going to be like, okay, so it's just the Catholics like beating up on the Catholics because it's happening up where the Protestants are in Northern Ireland. They're like, oh, this actually hits home because we're hearing the complaints back from these people.
Yeah, exactly. Gladstone behind this plan makes things so crucial because, again, you're trying to get these votes that you have to. When the Irish Party attaches themselves to the Liberals, they know that they have to try to get this legislation pushed through. Mm-hmm. The Tory Party, the Conservatives, not in. Yeah. They're not ever going to let this happen. Yep. They have some understanding. There's a little bit of kind of like, yeah, I feel for you, but at the same time,
it's a bridge too far.
Not enough, yes. But eventually when they are able to shift the powers enough to where the Liberal Party can actually get it passed through the House of Commons, the House of Lords immediately shuts it down. In the early 1910s, there is major legislative changes that says the House of Lords basically has 3 years that a bill shows up to them that they can shoot it down, and then after that they can't do anything. Mm-hmm. Like it has to be passed through. You can only delay this for 3 years. Pass it the first year, goes to the House of Lords, vetoed. Pass it the second year, goes to the House of Lords, vetoed. At the same time, the House of Lords understands that there's an expiration date on this, so we need to start putting enough pressure on Ireland at home so once this goes into effect, we have enough figures down there to where even if they get home rule and they make this happen, we still have a hand in this.
Yeah.
Eventually, it was 1914. The Home Rule Act does pass. The Ulsters were pissed.
Oh, hold on. What year was that?
1914.
When was the Boer War?
The Boer War, I believe, was early aughts.
Okay.
Maybe mid-aughts.
Going back real quick, the Boer War is essentially a conflict that took place in Africa, Southern Africa, correct? Mm-hmm. Against essentially the Boers and then also the British who were down there in South Africa. Now, once this thing kicks off, the Irish nationalist side actually sides with the Boer.
1899 to 1902.
Okay, so they side with the Boer against the Brits, who are also fighting with the English Irish on their side, like 40,000 of them. So you already have, during this thing going down in South Africa, you have the Irish fighting against the Irish. So even when they get out of the country, they're still trying to fight against each other.
Yep.
And what this also does is it reinstills this pro-Ireland, anti-English sentiment in a lot of these troops that are actually coming back home. And a lot of these guys are going to form kind of the foundation of this upcoming revolution, and they form what's basically called the Irish Republican Brotherhood. Not to be confused with the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, who's going to be making an appearance here in a little bit. The Irish Republican Brotherhood is basically the political wing of that. It's the group that is trying to go ahead and get change done through like legal means. And there's a guy named Patrick Pierce who actually kind of steps up as one of the leaders of this IRB.
Love this dude.
And this dude is the sole focus of anyone that's going to be in the positions of leadership here is going to be home rule. That's what the goal is. That's what everyone wants to focus on. So as he's trying to kind of build up support for this and everything, despite this home rule bill being previously defeated, it's not just like they're going to let it die. No. This is what they want. They're going to keep trying to get it, regardless of how they need to accomplish that.
In order for Gladstone to keep those votes from the Irish, he's got to keep playing ball.
Exactly. So you have Patrick Pierce, who's kind of running the political side of stuff, but then conflict starts to break out, or armed conflict starts to break out, when you have the Ulster Unionist Army, who's formed essentially as part of that Northern Ireland force, versus the Irish Volunteer Citizens Army.
Led by James Connolly.
God, I almost did James Connolly. I almost did a Scottish accent on that.
Kind of close.
But the government actually, the nationalists aren't going to be getting their guns from the English.
Nope.
They're not getting supplies like that. So they're having to go out to like the Germans and other countries to try to get weapons and everything. And the government kind of catches wind of this, which is still Protestant controlled and English controlled, and basically kind of clamps down on the Irish Volunteer Citizen Army. Stuff is kind of leading to a head, but all of a sudden something else kicks off in Europe, which is a little event called World War I. 200,000 Irish served in World War I. 30,000 of them were killed. So they definitely took part in this. They had people that were part of the English Irish that were probably more prone to actually fight, that were more loyal to the crown. You did have people that were just flat from, the Catholic portion of Ireland that went and fought. But one thing that was the constant fear overhanging this, seeing the events take place in Europe, the Somme, all that, was that Irish conscription was going to become a thing. And there's a big difference between volunteering to go over and fight and then being told when you are not even pro that country or don't believe they should be ruling you, and they're telling you go over and fight in this war that we're taking part in.
If you volunteer to go over, you might be looking at that as a way to better your life, as a way to advance in society.
And when you didn't volunteer, it's because you saw that as a detriment to your life and you had better prospects home.
So when you get told to, that becomes an issue. And obviously we're skipping something very big. To go back again to the Land Act, this happens in 1914. This ends up the Home Rule Act, 1914. It ends up getting suspended because of the start of World War I. Potentially, World War I was a world war that was started that probably stopped a civil war in Ireland.
It put a stopper in it. It put a pin in it. Didn't stop it. It delayed it.
Yeah. At the same time that you have these brave Irish soldiers going over there trying to make their mark, you have the Irish Citizen Army and the IRB and Patrick Pierce and James Connolly that are basically militarizing the people that are still there under them to try this uprising, because we're talking 2 years after this Home Rule Act had passed. And the Brits didn't do anything. Yeah. They've been fighting for this for hundreds of years. They finally get it accomplished. And then the English suspend Home Rule.
And what this also does is it weakens the English position on the Irish island. Because they're having to pull troops and, guys they had stationed there to go actually fight the war. And so the leaders of the IRB are basically planning this coup that's going to be taking place in 1916. They're planning it for Easter Sunday, where they're going to basically storm Dublin and capture key points in Dublin and basically establish a forced home rule for them. And World War I is it 1914 to 1917 is when it lasts?
1914 to 1918.
Okay, so they're doing this while the full attention of the English is currently in mainland Europe.
I'm going to check that, make sure we're not wrong.
Yeah, I'll keep going. So as this goes down, it has to change from Easter Sunday, which then becomes Easter Monday when they're going to actually, implement this. When was it?
14 to 18.
14 to 18. So we're smack dab right in the middle of it. They see their opportunity. They send a main force to go attack Dublin Castle, which ends up failing. But the bulk of the force actually was able to take the General Post Office, which is a government building and everything. It's right in one of the oldest buildings. It's like in the center of town. It has a lot of, maybe not meaning as far as strategic value, but from a visual standpoint of everything, it had to be very meaningful, or else I wouldn't think they put so many resources toward it. You think they put the bulk of the forces toward the castle?
Yeah, there was a lot of confusion that was going on Bloody Monday. There were a lot of things that they hoped was going to happen that didn't happen. There was a lot of things that kind of fell into their laps that I think they were generally pretty surprised by. Taking the General Post Office in Dublin was a very big deal because it was the main hub where anything comes in and out of in the mail. Nowadays, if you take a post office, it might not even make it to the outskirts.
Chances are you'll be gunned down in the post office by somebody that's already there.
Yeah.
One thing too is the force that they were using was supposed to be like 15,000, and this thing kind of fell apart, which is why they had to move it to Monday. They only ended up storming the city with like 1,000 people.
Yeah, we're not shitting on Easter Rising. I promise there will be an episode on it. This is just the overview of it. So we're going to get into a lot more detail when that episode comes. So don't be angry that we're not dipping into it. We understand how important this moment in Irish history is. This is the shit that was tugging on my heartstrings. It's like, this is the fight. This is when they start to say, hey, we're going to do what we need to do to get this back. And this is also kind of when the IRA starts to happen. And it's like, oh shit, maybe this is getting a little bit more serious than anybody expected.
Like, this is their golden opportunity. Like, they're not going to catch the English like this kind of with their pants down. Pierce goes out and actually reads a proclamation, like in the street, basically declaring the Republic of Ireland, their independence from the English crown and everything.
I'm not trying to shit on the Declaration of Independence. Hearing Patrick Pierce or a reading of Patrick Pierce's Declaration of the Republic, and pretty sick.
It's the accent, man.
Yeah. Okay, maybe that's why it sounds better.
I think it is. I think it can make anything sound good.
The Declaration of Independence in an Irish accent.
There you go. It didn't take long for the government troops to actually move in. It was by the end of the week that they had moved in like a 10-to-1 ratio advantage over the rebels at this point. There was full-on cannon fire, gunfire. Civilians were killed. They were shelling like the downtown area where the rebels had actually like taken up like the post office and everything.
It was like a big swath of land. I believe it was a park maybe next to the Capitol building. World War I. What do you do during World War I?
Trenches, baby.
Establish a defense.
Yeah, they actually dug. Yeah, the rebels dug trenches, didn't they?
You dig a trench in the middle of the park.
Which is ridiculous because they said that the buildings around the park were taller. Yep. And so it nullified the point of having a trench because they could just fire down into the trench. They were just going with what they knew, man.
Yeah,
they saw what was so successful going on in the actual war that was happening, and they figured it had to be, So this actually, the result of this is the rebels being at such a numerical disadvantage end up losing. Pierce and Connolly both surrender.
Took 6 days.
They were court-martialed and sentenced to death along with a bunch of the other, conspirators and everything like that. It was very quick. Court-martial, sentenced to death, and then it was like a firing squad.
Yep.
And it was like days of firing squads because there were so many of these guys, and they were very like nonchalant about it. They weren't trying to keep it like on the down low. It was like you knew when the executions were happening.
I believe the executions took place over 14 days.
Yeah.
So not only
are 2 weeks of just basically being like, you're killing these people for fighting for Irish independence.
And not only that, you're doing it in such a public way that maybe had you done it all at once, it would have been a shock and really sounded bad. But you're prolonging this pain that these people are feeling.
Yeah, because these are brothers, fathers, and everything, sons.
And leaders.
Yeah. And this turns these people into martyrs for the Irish independence cause. there were additional arrests. Basically, martial law was declared, and they were just going around to anybody suspected of being part of this, coup or whatever it was.
Thousands of people were arrested.
Yeah, thousands of people. And this is just radicalizing people left and right to this pro-Irish independence movement. The volunteer groups actually become reorganized, and this is where we get the formation of the Irish Republican Army, the IRA.
They will be getting to cheer for them or not.
Yeah, they get their own. Well, they come in different iterations. I feel like there's different groups of the IRA that use the IRA, and then whatever they're most known for, most extreme at, that's what you're going to associate that with.
The word that you were using earlier, terrorist attacks. It's such an interesting phrase to use because we've talked about it. A terrorist in one country can be a hero in another country.
Yeah. And
it really just depends on which side of the terrorist act that you fall on. Mm-hmm. And undoubtedly, all of these things are terrorist acts. They're terrorists. That's just what's going on. But at the same time, it's tough to look at that and say it has to be a terrorist act because you kind of believe in what they're doing. It's just a terrorist attack is so 50-50 depending on how you feel. The revolutionaries were terrorists.
Yeah. And a lot of this was actually pinned on this group, Sinn Féin, right?
Yep. They tried to, at least.
And it was Sinn Féin was like something is like the people or our people or something like that, our people. So one of those, it's like when you're designing like a political, like where the National Socialists Party, like the Nazis did, you're trying to fit everything in there. They're just like, fuck it, the people. This is what this party's about.
That was my struggle, not my people.
Okay, fair enough. So these guys actually drum up a ton of support because of all these martial law and all this unfair, treatment that the English are putting down onto the Catholic Irish and everything. And so because you now have all these people also able to vote, they kind of misjudged the temperature of the room, and all of a sudden the 1918 election rolls around for Parliament, and Sinn Féin, the politicians and people running associated, win a majority portion of the seats, which this basically means that they're going to be in control of this Irish-English Parliament. But at the same time, they look at that and they say, this tells us right now that the majority of people want people that are pro-Irish independence in here. So instead of actually going and serving in Parliament, we're just going to go ahead and set up the Irish Republic.
Yeah, England, their stupidity in all of this, because the killings for sure shifted public opinion. Then after that, they called this the Sinn Féin Rebellion. So all of those people that just became martyrs for that cause are now tied to Sinn Féin. So instead of trying to point the finger and say those are the bad people, all the perception that has just switched has now made them look at Sinn Féin as maybe this could be important. Then, on top of that, just like we talked about before, conscription happens. Mm-hmm. And when conscription happens after Easter Rising, that pisses everybody off.
Yep.
So that pushes more people towards Easter Rising into Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin had called their shot. They said, after the elections happen, we will get 80 seats and we will have full control. They got 73 of 105. Mm-hmm. Now, if I say 80 and I hit 73, I'm going to be pretty excited about those numbers. I'm pretty close to being right about that. All of a sudden, they have the power.
And enough so to where October 1921 rolls around, Sinn Féin or representatives from Sinn Féin go to London to discuss basically a political agreement to stop the bloodshed. Let's finally just put this to bed. No more Protestant, Northern, Southern, Catholic, all that kind of stuff. And they're like, no, this isn't, you guys are not in a situation where you have as many cards as you think. Yeah, you guys hold the Irish, the Parliament and everything like that. But that stuff still has to come to us. You guys are asking for these decisions, and we're saying yes or no to these.
All those seats that you guys are going to win have to be seats that you take in England because we still haven't given you home rule back. And Sinn Féin goes, oh, that's right. That's interesting. So you gave us home rule, but you didn't allow us to have home rule, so we don't have a parliament to sit in. So yeah, you're right. If we're going to take these positions, we're going to have to come to England and sit there, right? Mm-hmm. Wrong.
Yeah.
All wrong.
So this is going to kick off another civil war. Civil war time again. This one was brutal. I mean, just like all the other ones, but this one, a few things kind of stand out. There was an instance where these 9 soldiers got tied to a log.
Oh.
They had landmines put on them and then exploded.
Are we talking about the War for Independence?
This is in right between 21 and 23. This is that small little 2-year Civil War because it ends in 1923.
We got more, buddy.
Okay, go for it.
1919, January 21st. First day that Parliament is meeting. All of these Sinn Féin members that were supposed to show up and take their seats in the Union Parliament decide not to show up. They end up conferring, and they meet in Ireland and form the Irish Parliament. On that exact same day, there was something called the Solahedbeg ambush that saw 2 IRA members kill 2 police officers in Tipperary in Ireland, and they steal the gelled explosives that these 2 policemen were taking to the mines. And now all of a sudden you have
sweet nitro.
You have the IRA with explosives. Shit starts to go bad. Because as soon as this happens, the IRA starts basically spreading out into the countryside and raiding all of these police stations and stealing all of their guns. So now the IRA has a shit ton of explosives, a shit ton of guns. All of these police forces have now moved into the cities to try to protect the bulk of the people, but at the same time, there's kind of strength in numbers when all these police forces are right next to each other.
So this is going to be the bloodshed that I'd mentioned.
Yes. As soon as this kind of kicks off, this war for independence, they realized kind of what happened during Easter Rising was they can't stand and fight. This has to be guerrilla warfare. You can't just line up like you used to do and send your troops.
Type stuff.
Yeah. You have to figure this all out. Ambushes and raids started up just out of nowhere. Like I say, they'd already cleaned out all these police officers. Now you have all of the Protestants in the countryside that don't have any protection that are being attacked by these IRA members and then responding in force back and forth. So on November 21st, 1920, you get Bloody Sunday. This one was tough. There's definitely going to be an episode on this. We're just going to hit the high notes here.
There's 2 Bloody Sundays.
They're all, yes, this is the first Bloody Sunday. These are all low notes. Bloody Sunday starts out with the IRA summarily killing 15 British sort of people that were there. Some were believed to be spies. Some were believed to be police. Some of them were double agents. They were going into their houses in the morning where they knew these people were and shooting and killing them in their beds. There was one instance where they shot this guy and he wouldn't die, so they hung him outside of his window until he died, just basically to show the world what they were doing while his wife was still sitting in bed under gunpoint. This was very, very, very rough. Next part of the day, in the afternoon, there was scheduled to be a big soccer match, the Dublin Gaelic Football League. This is in Dublin, against Tipperary, which poetically is where the first shots were fired of the War of Independence. They had heard about the shootings from the IRA earlier in the day. There was actually a match that was supposed to be played before them that they go ahead and they let that happen. Before the Dublin Gaelic Football League went up against Tipperary, there was a meeting and they said, hey, we got to cancel this. There's going to be reprisal. This is the thing that the British do. There's always reprisal when this shit happens. We can't just send 5,000 people into this stadium and have them as sitting ducks. It ends up getting pushed through. They say there's already people that have gone through the turnstiles for the first game. Let's just let this happen. Plus, if we cancel the game, it's almost like maybe we're in support of the IRA and maybe there could be drawback. 5,000 people show up to this soccer match. Supposedly, the way that it goes was there was an airplane that flew over the top of the stadium, and that was supposed to be like the start. The Ulster Police Force shows up at one area, one exit. The Black and Tans, which were just a Black and Tan, basically the private military.
Like a militia, yeah.
Yes, of the English, show up at another exit. And then another one of these kind of militia forces named the Auxiliary showed up at the third. And what they said they were there to do, and again, this is the story in the afterwards, was as the people were coming out of the stadium, they were to search them to try to find any guns or anything like that. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that any of this is right. 15 guys that were just killed were probably pretty well known to these black and tans and to the police and to the auxiliary.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of emotion that's going on. Not enough emotion for them to start shooting and firing, like I want to say it was right before the end of the first half. They just start firing into the stadium. And not to mention, you're firing into a stadium. Everywhere around the outside of the stadium is lined with trees, and you have houses where there's people that are sitting in the trees looking into the stadium watching the soccer pitch. There were children that were shot out of trees because they were just sitting there trying to watch the game. All in total, there were 14 civilians killed. Oh, yeah. Well, and, I mean, we did a whole episode on this. What happens when there's chaos inside of a stadium?
The crush.
The crush happens. Yes, you get people that are running for their lives while they're being shot at, that are running over other people.
You think those stadiums are designed for a mass exodus of people at one point when it's in 1920? No.
Not to mention, all three of the exits are being blocked by the people that are shooting.
Yeah.
So you can't run towards there. All in total, there ended up being 14 civilians killed. There were 18 civilians wounded. 80 civilians wounded, sorry. When this goes back to Parliament and there's an investigation in this, they said that they recovered, like, I want to say it was 25 pistols from the people and all of this stuff to try to justify everything that happens. When they went back and did another investigation, they realized that they didn't find anything. This wasn't.
Why are all these English issued fucking pistols or rifles and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, weird must be when they broke in like to the police stations and stole them all.
Yeah, it's just so insane the way that they tried to spin this and say that this was just them doing routine security when this many people died. And of course, the guerrilla war continues after that, except for there's just so much more bloodshed that happened and so much more public-facing things that it gets worse. Finally, the Brits realized this isn't a winning situation. Like, we can't send a full military force in there to crush this IRA rebellion, because we already saw how bad it looked during Easter Rising.
Not only that, what are we going to tell the people that we're bringing in? Hey, congratulations on just getting back from Europe and the fucking hell that was World War I 3 years ago or 2 years ago. But we're going to need you to go over and start, maybe killing some Irish people.
Killing your people, the people that we're in a union with, and the Commonwealth compatriots.
And the people that you were probably also serving with to some degree during World War I.
There's nothing that they could do. And not saying that this wasn't the right option. This was definitely the right option. They realized that it was a no-win, and on July 11th, 1921, there's a truce that's brokered. This becomes a pretty big issue. December 6th, 1921, the Anglo-Irish Treaty is signed that establishes the Irish Free State at 26 counties under the dominion of the British. So they're a Commonwealth. Now, the reason that I emphasize 26 counties is because there's 32 counties in Ireland. The other 6 counties were formed into Northern Ireland, what is known as Ulster County, the area that was very Protestant heavy.
Mm-hmm. Very pro-English.
There's an issue, though, because Ulster County was actually 9 counties. 3 of these counties were so Catholic heavy that they're going to steal the votes.
Mm-hmm. Just church bells all day.
We can't let these people that we've pushed into this area of the county because we think they're ill-reputed, we think they're terrible people, we can't have them a part of it because if they're a part of it, they can fuck it up for everybody else. Mm-hmm. So we're only going 6 counties. And that's where you get Northern Ireland. Now, there's still going to be Catholics in Northern Ireland, obviously. We're going to talk about it a whole fucking lot during the Troubles. But it's a situation where now you have an issue because you just signed this Anglo-Irish treaty. The people that were pushing for full Irish independence wanted full Irish independence. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to be a Commonwealth. And that starts the fighting all over again. This partition of Northern Ireland with these 6 counties just immediately fires up.
And that's where we get into the Civil War kicking off, right? And so this is basically a civil war between Ireland. Yep. It's not like the English are stepping in, sending in. They're just like, they are, but they're just sending in like reinforcements for Northern Ireland. But it's a civil war.
So there's there's a tricky way to talk about this because you want to use the word civil war, but at the same time, the sides don't really show what a civil war is.
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about the Union and being a commonwealth, if you're a commonwealth of a country and you're attacking that country that's your commonwealth, that's an issue, right? That's not really a civil war.
Yeah, I guess yeah, looking at it that way, that makes sense because a civil war would be like if the Republic of Ireland, like in the South, were fighting against each other. Technically, what this boils down to is, although you have Northern Ireland and then the rest of it, it's not really like Northern Ireland considers himself to be of the same country as the rest of it. That's why they're Northern Ireland. That's why they're, more, it's the English version.
Well, this is actually like Northern Ireland almost takes steps back from this. They're kind of like, hey, you guys deal with it, because who's actually fighting in this is the people that supported the treaty.
Oh, gotcha.
And then
Okay, that makes sense.
That wanted full republicanism.
Okay, yes, that makes sense.
So you have the British, of course, backing the forces that agreed to this treaty, fighting against the forces that wanted full republicanism and wanted Northern Ireland to be a part of the Free State.
Correct.
And as this goes back and forth, it's crazy how fast it happens, because the pro-treaty forces, again, backed up a guy named Michael Collins, who was leading in the IRA, along with a guy named Amand de Valera, who Valera and Collins had both spent time in prison during Easter Rising. So they were pretty close to each other. They knew each other. But de Valera wanted, his dad was Spanish. That's why he doesn't sound English. De Valera sounds so weird talking about during an Irish show. He wanted full republicanism. He wanted a free state that was outside of the Commonwealth, whereas Michael Collins is like, it's not everything we wanted, but it's way more than what we had before. And Michael Collins has the forces of England behind him that's trying to enact this treaty. So the pro side immediately secures these major towns. And as soon as they get a hold of the major towns, they start pushing out against the anti-treaty Republicans. And it's just kind of a slog immediately, up to the point de Valera goes ahead in April 23, calls for a ceasefire. In this kind of squabble, you can call it a civil war, I guess. I don't really know what the term you would be, just a land war maybe?
An inter-Irish conflict.
Yes, okay, that's perfect, actually. Inter-Irish conflict. 1,070 soldiers were killed and 336 civilians were killed. So this is 2 years of just basically the outcome of what this treaty was, just for this treaty to be enacted.
It sounds like it's just these like little turf wars that are happening in these little skirmishes, not like full on like pitched battle of meeting each other. It's just like basically like smash and run hits is what a lot of it is. Trying to take out leadership and positions from other sides.
Yeah. So now the chessboard, we have England, we have Northern Ireland, and we have the Republic of Ireland. That's not the Republic of Ireland yet, because technically, since they took the treaty, they're still a Commonwealth.
It's the pseudo-Republic of Ireland versus the people that want to be the full Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the southern areas that are more of the, hey, we didn't agree to this treaty, they don't have the military strength to basically take the whole island. So it kind of gets down to where the Civil War ends in 1923. Stuff kind of cools down, and everyone's just kind of try to plot their next move. Some stuff happens during this time period. The church, again, as it always has, it has its hands in schools, the justice system, and kids, because there's this place known as...
Whoa. Not on kids.
In kids.
Oh, that's even worse than kids.
On and in. There was a place called
right?
St. Joseph's Industrial School. So it was these schools that would, people would be sending their kids to. It was also known as like a letter frack or something like that. But basically this was just a fucking cesspool of kids getting molested and everything. And they've had like interviews with people, and they're just like, they would come, get you out of bed in the middle of the night and everything. And we're in dormitories, so everyone's awake when this is happening. So yeah, just, classic Catholic stuff. Now, the majority essentially, the control that the church wanted to keep over the country starts to kind of extend itself into the morality of the country. Like,
that's an odd follow-up.
Yeah, I know. That's why I had trouble saying it a little bit, because it's a hard pivot. But basically, they wanted to kind of dig their heels in and more Catholicize it. So they started banning like classic Irish literature and everything, because this stuff generally spoke of revolutionary ideas and things like that from all these guys that had been going through this for the last couple hundred years. And we get the election of a new head of state. Last name is De Valera, who is, this guy comes in and is completely focused on sovereignty.
Yeah, that was the guy that was the anti-treaty leader.
Yes.
Iman de Valera.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. When you said the name, I had it all together. Yeah. Okay. Clicks now.
Spanish guy. Spanish-sounding guy.
But this dude was serious. This guy was the chair of the League of Nations when it was in existence. And what?
Finish. We got to go back to World War One.
No. Okay, go ahead. Go back.
Okay. There's some balls that Ireland has during this point in time. During the Paris Peace Accords, Ireland pushed to be a member sitting at the table.
Yes.
Ireland, that hadn't been granted home rule yet, that was a Commonwealth of England,
Yes.
petitioned the United States of America to get some spoils of war.
Yeah, but it was their own shit.
It was, but at the same time, like, you're sitting at a power conference next to France, the United States, and England.
And your landlord, basically,
Yes.
your current landlord being like, listen, I deserve this house. You guys should let me have this house. And England is just looking at him like, what the fuck? He's like, this guy, his rent is insane. This slumlord is keeping me subservient. I should have my own house.
What do you want from the Germans after they lost? I don't want anything from the Germans. Just talk to the English.
Our island. Just our fucking island, for the love of God. In World War II, Ireland is actually neutral. And neutral as far as officially neutral, there would be circumstances where I think the Luftwaffe did bomb Dublin. There were pilots Belfast, yeah, sorry. They bombed Belfast.
So Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland. And because that was the English one. And there was some help from what would be considered the Republic of Ireland and everything to help them. If there were Allied pilots that went down over Ireland and everything, they would get them back to like the English and everything. If there were Germans that got shot down, they took care of them as the Irish would. But other than that, they were considered neutral. Now, while De Valera is chairing the League of Nations and everything during this time frame, this is what the League of Nations was existing between World War I and World War II. Now, after World War II happens, De Valera is basically goes back to pushing this independence thing to the newly established UN. And he's basically making moves with the Republican Irish Army, where he's sending them out on like goodwill missions and like peacekeeping missions and doing all this kind of stuff to build up like worldwide kind of brownie points and everything. So when Ireland comes to the table at the UN and proposes like, do you guys know that we're still under these guys over here? Yeah, we should be our own thing. Remember how we've been helping everybody out? And everyone's like, oh yeah. So he's trying to kind of get in anywhere he can to get support for this push for Irish sovereignty.
Yeah. And just to go back for 2 seconds. Ireland being neutral didn't mean that the Irish didn't fight in World War II.
Correct.
They still sent 50,000 volunteers into World War II to fight. They still had skin in the game.
Correct.
So going into the League of Nations, or going into, not the League of Nations, after the League of Nations.
UN.
The UN.
Yeah.
Saying, we fought in this war. We put our blood, sweat, and tears into this. We lost the boat of the German pilots that we caught and sent the other guys up. Like, we need a little something here.
And at the same time, too, there's a way to maintain that neutrality on the outside toward Germany. You couldn't be like, hey, you guys are in open war with us. You just send your volunteers and send them through Northern Ireland, and then they could go down and fight. So there's ways to maintain that. But yeah, they definitely did participate in it. Just the country as a whole, its official position was neutrality.
Yeah. But yeah, you have
De Valera.
De Valera.
De Valera.
Pushing so hard. And we kind of have the same idea of right after World War I, when I'm sure the British were like, our guys don't want to go fight in England again.
No.
After World War II, shit's so much worse. You had the Nazis knocking on their door. You had them throwing rocks across the English Channel. And now you have to go across the Irish Sea if you really want to put this whole Republican shit down.
Which at this point, I don't know how you do that, because De Valera has essentially, in what ways he can, ingratiated himself to kind of the international community, that if England makes a move over there and tries to do it by force, people are going to be like, what are you doing, man? They weren't fighting against you in World War II. If anything, they helped contribute a little bit and everything. Like, it's not going to be a good look for them. They kind of get lucky because De Valera ends up kind of being too focused inward on Ireland instead of branching out more so, especially after World War II, despite kind of having that relationship with the UN, and then kind of becomes complacent with where Ireland currently stands, or at least the southern portion, the actual Republic of Ireland. And after he gets out of office in 1959, do you have anything before 59?
49.
Okay.
Ireland is declared the official Republic of Ireland. They're there. They are given that status. They're recognized as the Republic of Ireland. England is out. England is still sitting in Northern Ireland. There's still a Commonwealth in Northern Ireland. The Republic of Ireland, Ireland proper today, didn't finally become a sovereign republic until 1949. That's lifetimes for people. There's people alive today that were probably in their teenage years, maybe closer to not teenage years. But
so De Valera gets it done.
Yeah, he got it done. But at the same time, to think that Ireland proper has only been around like that since 1949 is nuts.
That is pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah.
So in 1959, a new leader steps on after De Valera leaves office named Sean Lemass. And Sean Lemass is basically kind of more of a forward-thinking, outward-thinking leader. He basically opens up Ireland to kind of the international community and everything. He's looking at all these other countries around them that, because they participated in the war, you get that huge boost in modernization that you get from all of that manufacturing that you've established. And he's looking around and saying, we're behind. We need to step up on this. We need to start an automotive industry. We need to do all this kind of stuff.
Not to mention what's going on in Northern Ireland at the time, in Belfast. Boatyards.
That's right. They've been a huge contributor to start creating. Wasn't the Titanic was built in Belfast, wasn't it? So, catching up to this, creating this, modern industry to even catch up to the fucking neighbors to the north that they have.
You can't look bad against the people that decided to stay in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that was the defining line, was I will be better off without England.
Yep. And now we have to actually implement that and make that true. So some of the things that they also implement, they do free secondary education, which essentially creates this extremely highly educated workforce that they're able to then send into these industries, that they get such a boom about this that I want to say it is I know it's jumping ahead a little bit, but I want to say it's like by the 80s or the end of the 80s, they're one of the actual financial and economic leaders in Europe.
Please tell me you heard what their nickname was.
No, I did not.
The Celtic Tiger.
They're
their economy.
Their economy was the Celtic Tiger.
It was referred to as the Celtic Tiger.
I like the Celtic part, but I don't know. I mean, you never had tigers on Ireland.
It's ferocious though.
We'll import.
What's the most ferocious animal on Ireland? Probably.
Well, there's
no snakes.
There's no snakes. Fuck, they have to have wolves or bears, or they have to have some type of natural predator.
Maybe an Irish bear.
They have deer, so you assume they'd have to have some type. Do they have deer?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I guess I didn't look into the ecology of it too much. But with this modernization, this secondary education, there is this just it's almost a renaissance essentially of Ireland coming into its modern own. And they end up kind of in 1965, the northern leader, whose last name was O'Neill, and Lemass end up kind of meeting up to start kind of repairing and building relations more so between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. They showed them in interviews. They were kind of joking around, and they're doing an interview together with the press. And he's like, we actually had an ongoing bet on who was actually going to get into more trouble for this. He thought he would. I thought I would. And he's like, O'Neill's talking. He's like, well, he got in trouble. He had a rough 6 weeks. He's like, I think I got the worst end of the deal. He's like, I'm still taking shit about it. But this ends up being a situation where O'Neill goes to what is essentially the English Irish Parliament there, and is like, hey, let's go ahead and start thinking about maybe kind of building some relations or like maybe reunification with the South. More at this point, guys, come on, we're Ireland at this point. Like there's nothing that should be separating us, and unfortunately, not a strong enough, political leader just wasn't convincing enough, and it was kind of shot down. And when these kind of talks collapsed, these things range from everything to like, additional Catholic rights in Northern Ireland and things like that. It creates kind of this level of unrest that's going to be popping off here in Northern Ireland.
Yeah. Before we hit the troubles, you want to need a bathroom break?
Let's do it. Well, hey there, all you sexy historians. How you guys doing?
It is time for
socials.
Where can they find us on Instagram?
If they want to follow us, they can find us at Historically High Pod on Instagram.
That goes the same for Threads as well. You can also find us on Twitter.
Tell them about Twitter.
Historically High. That's Historically HI on Twitter.
And if you want to email any of your comments or suggestions, where can they find us at, Adam?
At Historically High Podcast at gmail.com.
Gmail. All right, and back to the show. All right, let's get into some trouble with the Troubles.
Troubles are a pretty crazy time. And the interesting thing about it was this primarily takes place in North Ireland. North Ireland after World War II got pretty fucking bad for Catholics. The houses that were given out after World War II, as far as soldiers coming back, different things like that. Protestants were always given priority. They were given these houses while the Catholics would be put on waiting lists. This sounds like a shitty thing until you realize how much more shitty it gets when you realize that voting is actually tied to housing. So if you're a homeowner of a certain value, so even if you own like a shack or something like that, that doesn't give you voting power.
Yeah.
Just because you own a roof doesn't mean you get a vote.
Yeah, it's not what you're living under, it's what you got around you, is what it is, I think.
So for every home that you own above a certain value, you are allowed to vote. And if you are a Catholic that is sitting on a waiting list that doesn't have that, you are not allowed to vote. If you are a Catholic that's living in a house that is owned by a Protestant, you don't get a vote. But that Protestant that owns that second house gets a second vote. So you own 10 houses, you get 10 votes. You got 9 Catholic people living in those 9 rentals that you have. They don't get a vote. I don't believe it was a prime minister, but there were a lot of leaders in parliament there that were making suggestions to business owners not to hire Catholics. You have the disenfranchisement of them, then you have the job market drying up, because if you probably don't have enough money to own a house, you probably don't have enough money to own your own business, you probably don't have enough money to give other Catholic people a job.
The discrimination is out in the open. It's not subtle in the least.
Yeah, these neighborhoods that it still blows me away today watching the documentary that still today there are these things called peace walls in Belfast that run between Catholic and Protestant neighborhoods. And again, this is 2 white Americans that don't really understand religious poles in life. We could be making this sound dumber than the actual belief system is behind this. I understand that this is a hot button issue. I don't understand why it has to be a hot button issue, but there's people that are that passionate about this.
Yeah.
Still to this day. Just over religion. Just about some differences that you should just be able to look over.
Yeah.
But there's still beliefs because there's such a history of Catholics killing Protestants and Protestants killing Catholics that you can't let that go.
It's like 2 fans of a different like young adult novel series and everything arguing. You're just arguing over what storyline for your fictional characters is the better book.
Yeah. And again, I'm willing to take the hypocritical tag on this because Chris and I have talked about understanding why the Chinese are communist.
Mm-hmm.
We get that. There's no real mystery behind it. So to say that I have a little bit of misunderstanding of why religion is so serious in this, maybe that's just me being a hypocrite, not being able to draw the parallels between the two. But at the same time, it just blows me away that it got this bad and that it's still to this day not great.
The fucking Berlin Wall got taken down.
Yeah. Yeah, no shit. We figured out how to do that, but somehow they haven't been able to figure out how to take down these peace walls. In the early 60s, there were just all sorts of problems happening over in Northern Ireland. These problems are happening because just like they saw the American Revolution break, just like they saw the French Revolution break, now we have the civil rights era in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
We have the long marches. We have the protests. We have the fighting for equality and equal rights that people that are just absolutely fucked over by the Protestants are watching, and the passion is building. They begin these marches that are not immediately put down, but once the marches get to the Protestant parts of the city, the Protestants start putting them down. There were multiple marches and marches that happened that turned into riots that were literally just Catholics being killed by these Protestants that weren't happy with them showing up in their areas. There was a long march, just like we had the Long March in the United States, that was, I believe it started at a university. The first kind of major issue happened in Derry. That was where the first march that got shut down happened. I believe it was the following year they were marching from one of the colleges to Derry. It was like a multi-day march that they had just formed as these Catholics saw what happened. The crowd was huge. Before they get into Derry, there's a group of Protestants that show up and start causing problems and start fighting among these people. Later on, it was found out that it was a bunch of angry Protestants and then a bunch of off-duty police officers that weren't too pumped that this was happening, going on. But all of these marches, the difference that's going on is we're talking about the 60s. We're talking about a time when TV is national.
Yeah.
We're talking about a time when it's not just the radio, when you can look at a picture on a TV and you can see the violence that's going on to your people. And you just see this groundswell and you start to see the IRA rebuilding itself. The IRA was okay for a very long time.
Not as the IRB.
No,
this isn't IRA with an IRB like sidecar to it. They're just reforming this without reforming the political wing of it with the Brotherhood. They're just like, no, it's strictly the army at this point.
We have to figure out a way to fight for our people. And this rebuild of the IRA starts to really take form in the late 60s. There's actually a fracture in that because part of the IRA wants to start pushing towards legislation to try to protect people.
They're like, we want to be the Brotherhood. What happened to the Brotherhood?
There's a whole nother part called the Provisional IRA that fractures off that says, we tried this. We've been living in this area where you can't get legislation passed because they intentionally set Northern Ireland up to make us a minority.
It's like, you want to get it passed? Cock shotgun. This is how we're going to get it passed.
And that's what they do. The IRA, the Provisional IRA, we'll just call them the IRA, is this paramilitary force that begins this campaign against the British occupation of these 6 counties. From 1971 to 1975, the British, I forgot what the operation was called, sorry, they start interning Catholics that they believe are members of the IRA that are causing these troubles. Internment in the 70s, sponsored by Great Britain.
Yeah.
In Ireland.
Sponsored by the country who 20 years prior to that had actually gone through how many internment camps to liberate them to see what the internment actually looked like, are now just like, let's do that.
Yeah, and I mean, the numbers don't really bear out because it is 4 years, but 1 is too many at this point in time. As soon as Catholic internment starts, saw almost 2,000 Catholics that were placed in internment camps. They were held without charges or sentences for an indeterminate amount of time. Of course, when you go back and look at this and they actually do the investigation, they kind of find that there were methods of torture that were being used. England goes ahead and pushes back and says that not all of the methods of getting them to talk were done on everybody. they finally come to a consensus that if you used, I believe it was 5 or more of these tactics to get information out, it would qualify as torture. So we're nitpicking down the bad
What
things.
have I done so far?
Yeah.
I've done fingernails. I've done the bamboo. I've done the wedges behind his knees. I got two, one or two more.
Jumper cables on his nipples.
Yeah.
Ooh, that counts as 2. Sorry.
It technically counts as 2. You wanted to do both nipples,
Yeah.
and through the the Geneva Convention states that it's a nipple per crime.
So no matter how you say it, we're still talking about the internment of a religious group in the 70s by England. It's fucking nuts, man. The troubles were, I don't really know how to describe it. That same.
It was an era of like a localized, like, domestic terrorist battle is what it was. There was never any, hey, this army is here and this army is here and we're going to go and fight against each other with cannons and like artillery and all that kind of stuff. It was never organized like that. It was literally the IRA doing these just like bombings or hits and all this kind of stuff. And did you ever watch Sons of Anarchy? Mm-mm. See, all of this to me made all of a sudden now it clicks because they actually sell guns to the IRA. And I was like, okay, so who are the IRA fighting against? I'm like, what's going on? But they're selling like 50 calibers, like machine guns and stuff like that to them. But now it's just like, oh, yeah, okay. It's all starting to make sense now. But yeah, I mean, these are attacks that are occurring not in the Republic of Ireland, but this is all going on in Northern Ireland.
This is going on in Commonwealth territory.
And the IRA are not representative of who they represented before, which would have been the Republic of Ireland.
Yep.
So it's just this third party that is waging this, domestic war in the name of religion, basically.
Well, and the reason that this is a story that doesn't, this part of the Troubles don't really affect the Republic. That's a crazy stat that I'm excited to talk about. Is because once these riots started happening and once they started getting pushed on in the north of Ireland, these Catholics were trying to go down and seek refuge in the Republic. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to garner support for them to come up and fight for them. Most of the people in the Republic were like, you kind of chose your path staying there. Like, you didn't push hard enough.
I was going to say, I didn't know if that would sound horrible, but I'm like, I know there's a lot of you guys there. But you've always taken shit there. It's never been great for you there. At what point does a generation say, there's 80% of the country that is just on board with our shit, and it's just to the south. Let's just go down there, and it's just like, but look at our backyard. I mean, we have a really nice backyard. Let's just go ahead and stay here. And then you have the IRA that's going in, and I get that they're fighting for these people, especially the fact that these people are being persecuted just because they're Catholic and everything. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. But at the same time, the IRA could have been like, hey, we're a moving service. We're going to show up to your house. We'll help you pack up your stuff. We'll relocate you. There's a bunch of places down here. We'll find you guys something.
There's also the buildup over time because a lot of what's going on, a lot of who the IRA is fighting are these people that were called the Ulster Volunteer Force. The Ulster Volunteer Force had been building for many decades before this, and the Ulster Volunteer Force were literally just to keep the Catholics in line.
What do they call them, like the Oranges or something like that?
Yeah. Going back to William the Orange coming in as a Protestant leader.
That they were like orange sashes or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's, especially with how recent it is, it's insane. The fact that the Troubles resulted in like 3,532 combatants dead. These are people that are actively engaged with each other. And then 1,840 civilians dead. And here's the kicker though, 40,000 plus injured. That's insane. And how these people were injured is because a lot of these attacks, a ton of these attacks, were bombings. There was over 16,000 bombings. Almost 37,000 shootings between 1969 and 1998. That also includes, just going over it, there was another Bloody Sunday that took place January 30th, 1972. Most of these are bombings.
Yep.
Bloody Friday that took place July 21st, 1972. There was a period of time during, I don't know if it was that specific date, but there was a attack in which 13 explosives went off in the course of 16 minutes.
Jeez.
Just like terror for that entire time. And then after that fucking 13th blast, all you got to be expecting is like, how long is this going to go on? It's like a mini version of the Blitz. You don't know when it's going to end. There was a bombing called the Brighton Hotel bombing in October of 1984. This one was actually an attempt to kill Margaret Thatcher, who was actually staying at the hotel. And at that time, was she the PM? She was the PM of England.
The only time I can put Margaret Thatcher to anything is Austin Powers. He's trying to calm himself down. He's like, Margaret Thatcher naked on a cold day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it still ended up killing a PM, or an MP.
Yeah.
It killed somebody in these bombings, and this was a bombing that happened on English soil. This is the IRA that has pushed itself into these little cells in England that's able to bring this home. Mm-hmm. At this point in time, I'm sure most of the English are like, do we even still deal with Northern Ireland? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
What's going on? The people in the South are fine. Now it's the people in the North that are pissed, but they've been a part of us for so long.
MI5 is just like, fuck, we are so busy with Ireland. Like, just let them have it.
Yeah.
Like, trying to track down and, like, put together all these bombings. Because, again, 16,000 plus bombings, you're not catching anyone if these are still going on.
And there's just, what do you do? How do you pick these people out of a crowd? You can't. They all look the same. And if everybody's kind of on the same page in the same community, again, you can't go and arrest all of them. You can't do that because you're still a Commonwealth.
What is your mentality for 29 years living in Northern Ireland when it's just a constant stream of either bombings or shootings? Like, just the fucking stress level. People in cities where the majority of this is happening have got to be like, we got to get out to the country.
Yeah.
Or back to England. Or even some of the Catholics are probably like, shit.
And we talk about it during World Wars. When a place gets occupied or a place is under attack, it's not like you can just call out until that happens. You still have to go to work every day.
Yeah.
Except for instead of being attacked by a foreign enemy, you're going to work and you don't know if this is a Protestant that's walking outside of your building that's going to come in and shoot you or if it's a Catholic that's going to. Like,
or he's walking out from placing a bomb.
Yeah.
Or like if you're driving down the street and you pull up next to a truck, is there a fucking bomb in that truck? Is it going to go off?
And seeing some of the videos, they're regular cars that you would see on a street that there's 6 others, but it's sitting there in a populated area and it explodes. And what the IRA does and what the Ulster Volunteer Force and then eventually what the English military does, they're not just hitting the other side. Mm-hmm. They're hitting these areas where there's a mixture of people. So if you're the IRA, you might kill a few Catholics in a bombing, but if you killed more Protestants, does that prove your point?
Yeah, it's all a wash in the end, right? I mean...
Yeah.
I say that sarcastically.
I think we got it.
All right, it's just late in the recording session, so I don't know if my tone is coming across. So how do you stop this? It's been going on for 29 years. How do you finally just like nix this thing?
I heard that Big Bill Clinton went over and did kind of some peace talks and did a few things. And
Slick Willie.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he went over and played the saxophone.
I was going to say he went in there and he's like, I wrote this little song for you. It's called Peace in Ireland. It's got a fucking kick-ass solo here in the middle, so fucking change your panties, ladies.
He looks at it, some fair-haired lass in the crowd. He goes, I'll see you after. April 10th, 1998. This shit makes me laugh because it's just the religious aspect of it again. We had Easter Rising that happened on Easter Monday that was scheduled for Easter Sunday. Now we have the Good Friday Agreement that goes on Good Friday. It's before Easter is Good Friday?
Yeah, because I think, isn't Easter like mid-month? April 10th would be early. Yeah, because isn't it like you start Good Friday and that's when you're supposed to fast or do whatever you're doing?
Yeah, something about
Fat Thursday, and then Fat Thursdays when you can, I don't know.
That's when the big guy went into the tomb.
Sure.
And then Easter Friday is when he rolled the rock back and climbed out.
Jesus' erection allowed him to move the rock and then, take off into space.
That's some good religious talk.
That breaks it down.
It ends up being signed, and it ends again, most of the violence and the troubles, because you're always going to have these people where it's just never enough. You're always going to have these militant groups that are so far in one ideology that you can't say, I agree with the other side. No matter what happens, if they say left, I have to say right. If they say up, I have to say down. Just because we decided to end the violence doesn't mean that I decided to end the violence.
Yeah.
And so it still goes on. But this whole idea with the Good Friday Agreement was there was going to be 2 referendums. There was going to be one in Northern Ireland, and that was going to be basically asking if Northern Ireland supported this agreement to end the violence and not become a part of the Irish Republic. That one was passed. I don't remember. I think it was like 70% of the vote was yes. The Irish Republic was then given a referendum that asked if they would allow the government to sign it, because the last time that they didn't ask the people about signing a document after the War for Independence, we got a whole nother war.
People don't want to be told something, even if they want it, or even if they're willing to accept it. But if you make it sound like you're asking for permission, it's gonna come across a lot better.
And I want to say that this one was like 80%. I can't imagine at that point in time. I'm sure the Irish Republic would have loved to have had Northern Ireland back and tried to make that happen. They're trying to outdo England at this point. So if they don't have to worry about all those troubles, if they don't have to basically try to push for that beehive that's been going on for the last 29 years above them, the fuck? Why do you even want that stuff back? So they end up agreeing to it too.
Yeah, and this is the time, like you're talking around 98, this is when, Ireland has kind of hit the highest point up to that point it has, because it's considered one of the richest countries in Europe.
Yeah, it was very big during the dot-com boom. I can't 100% explain to you how websites all migrated towards Ireland, but I do know, I believe it was Dell and another computer company.
Google.
Farmer in the Dell,
Netscape.
something like that. They were
Microsoft.
Microsoft sounds good in Irish, but they had these computer companies that were building computers there. Now, we also talked about at the same time in Scotland how they kind of had their own silicone boom, and they were very, very big in building microchips. Ireland, for some reason, has this draw with the dot-com boom that also begins to affect them poorly after the dot-com bubble bursts, because then people leave. So you have this push and pull of the Irish economy that is, I think, in a way, still trying to keep up. And we'll talk about the weird fucking deal with Brexit here in a second. But they're always trying to keep up with England. Yeah. Ireland needs to look good because they are an independent republic that branched off now. And I got to say, I think, generally my impression of Ireland, beyond all of the kind of weird shit that's going on in the world everywhere now, has all been pretty good.
Yeah.
I feel like Ireland is a place that's on the rise. To know that they've only been doing this for 76 years.
Yeah. They've managed to keep that part of out of the tourist books and everything like that, and out of some of the more vacation centric documentaries, like, hey, come to Ireland. It's not like we were, bombing each other 30 years ago or 40 years ago or whatever it was.
So after the Good Friday Agreement, of course, there's still some fighting that continues sporadically.
You're going to have extremist groups going back and forth and everything. There was a bombing called the Omagh bomb that occurred on August 15th, 1998. So it was probably in defiance or something like that of the actual Good Friday Agreement.
You want the crazy fact?
I do.
The longest continuous British military operation was Operation Banner, which took place in Northern Ireland. It lasted from August 1969 to July 2007. That was the longest continuous British military operation, was against Ireland.
That's pretty nuts. Okay, fact time for you. I already gave you this one, but it's still, I want everyone to hear this.
Oh.
Okay, so the term hillbilly. Everyone has probably heard it. If you're outside the States, hillbilly is in reference to essentially like a hick that kind of lives in the mountain, like mountain people.
Hank Hill.
Hank is, he's a domesticated hillbilly.
Well,
Dale
could be a hillbilly.
Dale Boonhauer might be a little bit of one. Definitely. Who's the other one? Dale is the one that's like, Hank, Boomhauer. Is
killing me.
All of them.
Where is your king of the hill? No,
Sorry,
we got
man. I got all their names right except for Boomhauer. Boomhauer, whatever. I got Dale. And I got them.
Okay, so who calls Hank Hill a hillbilly then?
Isn't it John Redcorn?
No.
Who?
It's his neighbor.
I haven't watched King of the Hill in a long time.
All right.
I'm sorry I'm dishonoring you right now. Anyway, so how the term hillbilly came about
phone.
is during the immigration of the Ulster nationalists, like some of the Scots and everything that had moved there, they also immigrated over to the United States. When they got to the United States, like a lot of cultures do when they all immigrate over together and everything, they form like communities. Same thing with like Chinatown, all that kind of shit. So the Scottish would actually kind of like work their way inland and kind of establish these communities. Sometimes they would be like in the hills and everything. There would then be a subsect of those Scottish that didn't play nice with others, and that would go live up in the mountains or the hills. Now, the short, the classical Scottish name of William, short for that is Billy. Mountain Williams became hillbillies. And you can take that to the bank.
That's incredible. Kind of trying to catch us up in today because this relates back to so many other things that happened. Brexit. The UK trying to leave the EU. Ireland, after leaving the UK, joined the EU. Now, just because relations were that bad between Ireland and Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland didn't mean that they wanted a hard border. They've always had a pretty soft border just because there's travel. I mean, there's families in the north that are related in the south. Everybody being a part of the EU, that was okay because you were all trading and everything that was going on.
There's a shared currency and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah.
So it was all going on in the same direction. Now you fast forward to Brexit, when the UK is trying to break away, all of a sudden, if the UK leaves the EU and you get out of the European Union, there has to be a hard border that goes up between Northern Ireland and the Republic.
Yeah.
That makes things very difficult because all of the treaties that they had talked about had the inclusion of a soft border between.
This piece is holding on by a fucking thread, man.
Yeah.
Don't throw any wrenches into this machine.
No, all of the fires, all of the shit that went on, the historical fires, the fighting, everything like that. Now we're talking about modern day shit, and they're hearkening back to these old agreements, and they're like, don't bring the IRA back. They're hearkening back
to agreements from 98 is what they're doing.
Well, and you have to think at this point in time, too, Northern Ireland probably wasn't the one pushing for Brexit. That was England.
Yeah.
That was all them. And that's going to screw up every single bit of trade and goodwill that Northern Ireland has fostered with the Republic of Ireland. So their plan, once they leave, is to create basically... It was a soft sea border in the Irish Sea to where any sort of commerce would have to cross through that. The issue with this is all of that stuff is going to have to go through customs because there's no hard stop.
Yeah.
So everything that Northern Ireland sends up has to go through customs. It gets stopped. It gets held up. All of the shipments and promises that they are with their trade with England themselves all have to sit in line at customs.
Stuff can go easily from Northern Ireland to England.
Yeah.
But it wants to go anywhere else, including south. It's going essentially into the EU, which is this insane plethora of restrictions. Not only is that going to impact them trading internationally, but probably one of their biggest trading neighbors is the Republic of Ireland, considering they share the island. Yep. And now it's adding all this red tape to it. And it doesn't take much to piss people off.
No. It almost makes... It pushes to the point to where Northern Ireland is now looking up at England. They're like, hey, man, we fought for you for a really long time. You got to figure out something. This wasn't the whole thing that created the toppling of prime ministers, but the weird rat-faced guy?
Tony Blair?
No. He had a rat face. Wow, they all kind of had rat face. The pudgy fellow with the bad hair that was in there during COVID.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember. I'll find out.
Yeah, he quits. Then you get Liz Truss. I think Liz Truss was on the seat of prime minister for a cup of tea. She didn't even make it a full month, I don't think.
Yeah.
And then they finally got a prime minister who has figured out kind of a weird push and pull of how there's different shipping lanes. So if you are shipping something to Northern Ireland, you can avoid the customs, where if you're going down to the Republic or vice versa, it's in another shipping lane. But this whole Irish question had thrown Brexit into kind of a state of chaos, trying to get everything figured out. And it just goes back to Ireland always being the thorn in England's side, but England could never quit Ireland enough to stop. Like, they were just willing to put up with the bullshit. And after finally you get through the troubles and you can end your occupation there, you're like, everything is cool.
Yeah.
Now we want to leave the EU.
It was Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson. Okay.
That's right. And here's the thing, too. This is where we come to our stopping point, because we're pretty much caught up. And during this, two-parter, if we got some things wrong, that's because there's a lot of Irish history to cover. A lot of names, a lot of events, all that good stuff. One thing we would like to extend is an invitation, or actually kind of a reverse invitation. We would like the country of Ireland to bring us out, to show us and walk us through their history. And we would like to record that to share with you good people. So Ireland, get on it.
Yeah, ball's in your court. We did our part.
Our hands extended. Shake our goddamn hand.
Yeah, if you want to fix some of the things that we said, we're not going to fix them until you invite us over. So
That's
take
right.
that.
All right, man. You got anything else?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed this epic two-parter on Ireland. Stay tuned. We're going to be covering more countries in the future. But we hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll catch you on the next one.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit them with it.
Our Instagram is Historically High Pod, Historically High POD, and we are on Twitter at Historically High. That's Historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those two, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.